A fake officer is forced onto the battlefield against aliens, but after an accident, his life goes into a loop. A series of fragmented news reports describe how an asteroid that crashed into Earth brought with it an alien race called Mimic. It crashed into Europe and devastated the continent. Now the lives of all humans are at risk. Losing battle after battle for 5 years, the NATO-led United Defense Forces finally achieve a victory at Verdun, France. All thanks to the new mechanized combat jacket suits. British Special Forces soldier Sergeant Rita Vertowski is named the Angel of Verdun after single-handedly killing hundreds of mimics. Thanks to this good news, humanity still has hope for surviving the incident. Rita, now an icon, motivates hundreds of citizens to join the armed forces to fight against the alien forces. Another character you need to know is Major William Cage. Cage is one of the talking heads in the newsreels that tell the story of Vertowski and promote the war effort. Cage finds himself in a helicopter flying over London. He wakes up from a nap before an important meeting with the commander of the Western Allies, General Brigham. Initially, Cage assumes that the general seeks his help in bolstering his public image or preparing for a post-war political career. Then he discovers that the general orders Cage to accompany the first wave of Allied troops to land in France and provide on-the-ground coverage. In his youth, Cage was a college ROTC cadet and was majoring in advertising. He has no combat experience, so he tries at all costs to avoid the order to incorporate the combat unit and avoid deployment. Cage ends up blackmailing the general using his media skills. The general apparently agrees with Cage, but then gives the order to arrest him. Cage attempts to escape, but the guards taser him, rendering him unconscious. Cage wakes up on a pile of duffel bags in the afternoon at Heathrow Airport, which has become a huge military base and the starting point for the invasion of the continent. A sergeant kicks him and wakes him up before Sergeant Farrell takes over. Sergeant Farrell has orders received from General Brigham that describe Private Cage as a deserter who has impersonated a major. Cage is assigned to a band of oddball soldiers, the J Squad. The gang is caught playing poker, while Cage is introduced to them. It was forbidden to play cards, so Farrell forced the J Squad to eat the cards. Cage doesn't make a good impression after Farrell tells everyone he's a deserter. After that, he instructs them to prepare Cage to deploy with them tomorrow. Cage tries to say he's not ready, but Farrell gives him the uniform, saying he'll be reborn tomorrow. Then Cage is immediately taken by the team for physical training. It was the first time Cage tried on the legendary combat suit. He used to talk about it on television. Now, everything is real. Shortly thereafter, Cage, along with the J Squad, head out to the battlefield. Since the Earth has already lost France and Germany, it is a decisive battle. If they lose the battle today, they have lost the war. As they are about to jump from the plane on the French coast, the rear end of their plane is hit by an enemy weapon, and the squadron falls prematurely. Cage falls into the water, and soon realizes that what was supposed to be a surprise attack ends up being carnage. Numerous fighter planes were destroyed by enemy missiles, while soldiers were killed by the aliens. While on land, Cage met the Angel of Verdun, Rita Vertowski. Rita gets distracted and is hit by a missile. Cage gets up and starts to run, but is soon stopped by Sergeant Vertowski. The sergeant plans their next move, and in the process, Cage notices an alien popping up from the ground. The alien kills all the soldiers around in seconds, and Cage manages to kill it at the last second. Still, in shock and about to die, Cage grabs a claymore mine as a blue giant mimic, an alpha, jumps on him. The ensuing explosion kills the alpha mimic, and just before Cage dies, the alpha's blue blood covers Cage's wounds. Cage immediately wakes up in a panic in the same spot where he was the day before, on top of the duffel bags. Cage encounters Sergeant Farrell and looks around confused. As Farrell takes him to the J Squad, Cage repeats the phrases the sergeant said the day before. Cage seems truly reborn and relives the same scenes from the day before. He falls back into the water and saves Rita Vertowski from the missile, but then ends up being killed by an alien. He wakes up again and desperately tries to explain to Farrell what is going on. Farrell doesn't listen and takes him to the J Squad, where Cage predicts everything that's going to happen, including the snack with the playing cards. Everyone takes him for a fool and plugs his mouth with duct tape. Despite his desperate attempt to explain that the mimics will ambush the entire invasion, no one believes him. With each time loop, he becomes slightly more adept at killing the mimics and saving the J Squad members and Vertowski, but the mimics are too numerous and eventually kill everyone. In one cycle, he survives long enough to tell Vertowski that he is stuck in a time loop. At this point, Vertowski tells Cage to find her when he wakes up, before they both get killed again. Cage wakes up on the Duffels again, but cooperates with Sergeant Farrell and J-Squad to buy time to find Vertovsky. After several fatal attempts to slip away, Cage finally manages to escape during PT and finds Vertovsky in a training bay surrounded by training drones. Cage reveals that she told him to meet after waking up, and Vertovsky orders him to follow her. Cage is surprised to hear that Vertovsky knows exactly how things will go. In fact, she reveals to him that she has been through a situation already. She takes him to a weapons depot, where her acquaintance, Dr. Carter, works. There they go to a back room, and Vertovsky with Carter explains the time loop. Carter has come up with a theory that all mimics are just neural manifestations of an overmental Omega alien creature, the brain of which handles all the mimics on the battlefield. The aliens possess the ability to turn back time, so every time an alpha mimic is killed, they run time backwards, allowing them to accurately anticipate the next actions of the invading forces. Vertovsky explains that she entered the loop when the blood of a large blue alpha mimic was spilled on her, just as Cage experienced. She got stuck in a time loop in Verdun, which allowed her to kill hundreds of mimics on her own in what became her final loop. She also reveals that the aliens had purposely lost at Verdun to give humanity hope, prompting them to deploy all forces on the battlefield to destroy them. Vertovsky tells Cage that he must repeat the cycle until he has shown some information that will help them gain access to Omega. Cage doesn't feel ready, saying he hasn't had proper preparation before being deployed to the battlefield, and Vertovsky coaches him. During training, Cage breaks his back, and Vertovsky reveals the most important rule to him. If he is injured, he must die as soon as possible. Otherwise, the cycle will be broken forever. Whenever Cage returns to training, he must report to Vertovsky, as she is not part of his cycle. Through a large number of loops, Vertovsky trains Cage, in some cases, killing him after he is injured. Before awakening, Cage finally has a vision that shows the Omega hidden deep within a dam in Germany. Vertovsky and Carter believe the visions are due to Cage's exposure to the blood of an alpha mimic. Cage and Vertovsky focus their efforts on surviving the invasion beach and arriving inland in Germany. After improving his combat skills, Vertovsky tells Cage to meet her on the battlefield. Despite their best efforts, both continue to die, and Cage gets stuck in the loop. All the while, Cage feels something for Vertovsky, and seeing her die in repeated loops begins to take an emotional toll on him. During each loop, Cage would wander away from the J-Squad, and some members would track him down. After beating him numerous times, Cage was used to it and predicted every move with his eyes closed. Cage manages to get away from the military base to go to a bar for a drink. In the meantime, he hears people talking about the war, without knowing at all what was really going on. Some people thought that the aliens wanted minerals as well as oxygen. Abruptly, the electricity cuts out, and Cage leaves the bar to figure out what's going on. The aliens have invaded the city, eventually killing him. We can deduce that they have very little time left before humanity disappears from the Earth. Dr. Carter finally finds the place that Cage had seen. Nevertheless, after countless failures on the battlefield, Cage seems to have given up hope. Cage and Vertovsky move on to the next phase. After surviving the first wave on the battlefield, they finally manage to get inland and take a car to head to the place where Omega is. On the way, they are attacked by an alien, but Cage has already been through this and manages to neutralize it right away. During repeated attempts, Cage develops an attraction to Vertovsky and slowly gathers details about Vertovsky. In a loop, Vertovsky tells Cage that she had a boyfriend in Verdun, who she watched die 300 times until she could no longer loop and he died forever. They run out of gas and find a farm where they find a helicopter. Vertovsky proposes to use it, but Cage considers it dangerous. Cage has repeated the loop hundreds of times, ending up even knowing how much sugar to put in Vertovsky's coffee. Vertovsky realizes that Cage is trying to convince her to stay at the farm for the night. Cage admits that they have looped back to the farm several times already, but each time, Vertovsky dies. On the other hand, he survives and could kill Omega, but he doesn't want to get out of the loop, losing Vertovsky forever. She doesn't listen to him and gets into the helicopter, crashing into the house. After that, they are killed by aliens. In the next loop, Cage skips training with Vertovsky and heads to the German dam by himself. He doesn't find Omega inside and is almost captured by the mimics before he manages to drown himself. In the next cycle, Cage, Vertovsky, and Carter put the pieces together and realize that the visions were false. Omega knows that Cage is in the loop and is now hiding. With no other leads, the device Carter made is their last chance. Vertovsky and Cage focus on obtaining the device, which is located in Whitehall in a safe in General Brigham's office. They infiltrate the Ministry of Defense and Cage predicts every move and every detail, leaving the general speechless. After numerous attempts, they convince Brigham to give them the transponder. Brigham relents and gives them the device before sending troops after them. The two attempt to escape in a car. As they escape, Vertovsky stabs the transponder into Cage's leg. At that instant, Cage sees the Omega's true location, deep inside the Louvre Museum in Paris. As they try to escape, their car is stopped by a soldier in a mechanical vest, and the airbag knocks out Vertovsky. Cage is wounded in the leg and begins to bleed. He loses consciousness and wakes up strapped to a hospital gurney, under arrest. He sees that he is receiving a blood transfusion, and in the process, Vertovsky enters to kill him so that he can repeat the loop. Cage stops her to reveal that he is out of the loop for good. Vertovsky helps Cage escape, but without the ability to go back in time and only hours before the doomed invasion. Cage decides to recruit the misfit J-Squad to help them get to Paris. Cage's now intimate knowledge of the J-Squad and Vertovsky's credibility convinces the J-Squad to accompany them. Later, they steal a plane and fly to Paris. Once in the vicinity of the Louvre, the Mimics attack their plane. They must avoid killing the Alpha Mimic guarding the Omega, as this will cause the Omega to reset time. Cage tells all team members to each distract an Alpha Mimic and accept death. In the firefight, half of the J-Squad is killed. Cage, Vertovsky, and the 3 remaining J-Squad members decide to use the remaining engine power to slide the plane into the Louvre. Once inside, the plan is to use grenades to destroy the Omega. The rest of J-Squad sacrifices themselves to make Cage and Vertovsky enter the museum. Once there, Vertovsky tells Cage that she will distract the Alpha Mimic. She tells him that they won't be able to survive together and kisses him, telling him that she wishes she had more time to get to know Cage better. Vertovsky leaves to distract the Alpha Mimic, and Cage dives underwater to find the Omega. After a short chase, the Alpha captures and kills Vertovsky. The Omega senses Cage nearby and sends the Alpha to stop Cage. The Alpha dives behind Cage and stabs him, but before he dies, Cage pulls out the grenade pins and drops the grenade belt into the Omega. The Omega explodes and dies, and all the Mimics die with it. After Cage dies, the Omega's blood flows and penetrates him, as the Alpha's blood did on the first day of the cycle. Cage wakes up suddenly, confused, and finds himself on the helicopter en route to London the morning before the invasion and is meeting with General Brigham. He steps off the helicopter and hears the celebratory tolling of the bells. He attends a press conference, during which the general announces that a huge and mysterious energy explosion has been detected in Paris. The general says that the Mimics are dead and that human forces have succeeded in defeating the enemy. He then sees J-Squad engaging in PT at the base. After that, he finds Vertovsky training exactly as she did at the beginning of each cycle. She greets him rudely, and Cage smiles broadly. Click here to find out what happened to a couple when they found a half-sheep baby.